Oh, this speaks to me. I want this. That's message clarity. It's the difference between being understood and being perfectly understood. And when I say perfectly understood, it's both. It's a two-way street. It's you as my prospect. You perfectly understand me. But through my message, I am showing you that I perfectly understand you. That's message clarity.
Hey everyone, welcome to On Messaging, a show for B2B product marketers on how to create messaging that resonates with your audience. I'm your host, Josh Chronister, and on the show today we have Zach Messler, messaging consultant and educator. Before moving into being a consultant, Zach was heading product marketing at Appian. Zach's been doing product marketing and messaging for over 20 years. In our conversation, Zach shares the evolution of messaging and product marketing, understanding audience resonance and feedback, conciseness versus completeness in messaging, awareness of bias in messaging, so much more. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it on your favorite podcast app, YouTube, or Substack. It's the best way to get notified of every new episode. All right, let's jump into the conversation. Zach, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Josh, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is fun. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I originally reached out. I heard you on another podcast, We're Not Marketers. Fantastic podcast for product marketers as well. And you talked a lot about messaging. Just listening as well, I heard a lot of your enthusiasm for the topic and passion for messaging. But today I wanted to go a little bit deeper into your background. I know you've been doing messaging and product marketing related things for nearly 20 years. But I wanted to dive deep into some of your approach of messaging, how it's changed, know a little bit more on how you see messaging in when it resonates. How do you tell? And I also heard a little bit about you having a clarity workshop. And then another thing I wanted to dive deeper into is see how do we know when we allow biases to creep into our messaging?
Oh,
So
that's a great question.
yeah. So how's all that sound to you?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you have been doing messaging and product marketing related things for many years, more than I have. So you have a lot of knowledge on this. But I wanted to first kick things off and ask, how has your approach to messaging changed? Maybe from when you started
Sure,
doing it to now.
sure. Well, think back to when I first started doing it. To tell you the truth, it hasn't really changed that much. I mean, it's my skill in doing it has definitely evolved, and I'll get to that. I mean, I found some old stuff. I'll get to that. But the approach itself, although it's gotten a little deeper, the foundation of it's still the same. So I've been doing product marketing, messaging, positioning, all that stuff. I started probably my first job in product marketing was 1999. So it's been almost, I guess it has been 25 years, which is nuts. So it's been a long time. I was new service launch manager for a company in the dot-com boom. And when I first started in product marketing, I didn't know what that was. Nobody really knew what that was.
People
And
may
I
not
was
know what it is now.
recruited. Yeah, I was recruited for this role from someone who knew me. I was trade show guy. That's how I started my career in tech. I was trade show guy. And over time, I got more responsibility because I took it, right? It's my show. I'm doing the messaging. It's my show. But we didn't even call it messaging. Like it's my show. I'm writing the signs.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
my show. I'm defining the theme. It's my show. I'm going to figure out what products we need to have here. It's my show. I'm going to train the salespeople on what we need to say. So what I didn't realize when I was doing that was I was doing product marketing. So a former colleague, really, she was more senior to me, moved on, and then had this role open, and threw the fishing line off. I don't know if this is a video podcast or not. Threw the fishing line out. Come on, work with me. And she said, I want you to do new service launch. She said it's product marketing, and you're really good at product marketing. I said, I don't know what that is. I don't do product marketing. And she said, do you do messaging, like what to say? Like, yeah. So do you do sales enablement, like giving sales teams the tools to sell more stuff? Like, yeah. Do you know how to attract buyers, like say to a trade show booth or something else? Yeah. Like, dude, you do product marketing. So come work with me. And that was the start of it. And I did all of my product marketing work in technology. I worked in, it was really the dawn of SaaS, but I worked in technology, software companies, SaaS companies, sometimes companies that had even hardware elements of what they did, but I'm not technical at all. And the thing about product marketers and product marketing in general, product marketing is a marketing discipline where you're connecting product with audience through capabilities and channels. And those capabilities are audience research, buyer persona, getting in the head of your audience. It's positioning. How do we show up in the minds of that audience? It's messaging. What do we say in support of that position? You have to be a great writer, in my opinion, to be a great product marketer. So there's a lot of copywriting and content, that sort of thing. But then channels are anything that's market facing. So product marketers make any part of marketing more effective. Product marketing makes sales more effective, makes customer success more effective, makes customer support more effective. I got into this argument at my last corporate stop. It makes recruiting more effective. Anyone that's selling something, I call it a product, but it can be a product, a service, an idea. If you want someone to buy your idea, buy your service, buy your product, product marketing makes that more effective. It makes that happen more easily. So, not technical, having to be the expert in the product and the expert in the audience because you got to connect them. I had to get to a way where I could truly understand, deeply understand a product or a feature, sometimes a super complex technical feature. So the way I did that, I was a philosophy major back in the day. And I leaned in on Aristotle. I always loved the ancient Greeks, and I leaned in on Aristotle. And Aristotle talked a lot about essence in one of his works. About essence, and he says, essence is that it was to be. That's the literal translation. That it was to be, or what it was to be. So I like to think of it as what essence is the thing that makes this thing be the thing. The thing that makes this thing be the thing. And I thought, if I could get to the essence of this feature, if I can get to the essence of all of these features, I'm going to be able to understand the entire product. And that's what I did. So I came up with 3 big rock questions, and these are still at the foundation, at the core of everything that I do with messaging. It is not traditional at all. We didn't have any, there were no product marketing courses or certifications or anything back in the day. There just weren't. In fact, product marketing wasn't even really, I had no idea what it was when I started in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to come up with my own stuff the entire way along, and I did. So this is how I do it now. Those 3 questions to get to the essence are, what is it? So this thing that we're selling or this feature, whatever it is we're talking about, what is it at its core? This is hard. These are hard to answer, man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I feel like a lot of times when you ask someone, like a product leader or someone who's overseeing the product as a whole, and you ask them that simple question of what is it, you might be there for a little while.
Oh, for sure. And watch. So start asking in your role, right? Start asking product managers in your role. So people listening, like if product marketers, start asking people in general, what is it? This thing, just what is it? Don't tell me anything else, just what is it? Most people will tell you what it does. They won't tell you what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I can I could definitely attest to that. That's even on like I feel like you could also approach that to, obviously you have the whole product, what is it? But even deeper when you have, say, a new feature launch or something like that, and you need to write the messaging for it, even asking that question specific to the feature, what is it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people overthink it. When I say what is it, I literally want to know what is it? What is it? That's only the first question. So what is it? What does it do? Again, at its core, what is the one thing, not 6, not 2, not 50, What's the one thing that this thing does? If you can't come up with one thing, you're too in the weeds. It's lifting. I always say with messaging, you never want to dumb down a message. You want to lift it up, right? It's not about dumbing it down. It's about lifting it up. If you lift it up, things can fit underneath it.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Our audience, no matter what you're selling, if you think of if your audience needing something to be dumbed down, that's offensive to your audience. You're not looking at things the right way. It's not about dumbing it down. So what is it? What does it do? And then the kicker question, and this is probably the most important of the three. Why does it matter? Not why does it matter to us? Why does it matter to the people it should matter to? Now, you may have different answers for why does it matter based on the audience segment, and that's fine. We do need to come up with, though, if you're doing like a brand message or you're doing a product message where you're just putting out a single campaign on it and not segmenting things, you will need to come up with a why does it matter that fits all of those audience segments. But typically, what you want with why does it matter almost becomes a narrative. Why does it matter needs to focus on that specific audience. Why does it matter to the people it should matter to? So in answering or to answer these questions most effectively, there's certainly more questions that come up that you have to answer. But these are the core. These are the ones. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? If you can answer those three, my gosh, you're like 90% there.
So your approach really hasn't changed from when you started. More, you've learned to ask more simple and clarifying questions to get to a place that can help you build messaging. And it sounds like your background in trade shows obviously helps a lot, because if you think about a trade show booth, you need to have very succinct and specific messaging. You have people walking around a trade show floor with booths everywhere,
Yeah.
often with very similar products. So they're competing with each other, and you only have so much space on that booth to write some copy. So that sounds definitely from a good place to start, from being a PMM or product marketer to how you're developing messaging. Where do you in your journey did you come up with those three questions? Like, was there an epiphany moment?
It wasn't really so much an epiphany moment. My guess is it was probably my first launch because, again, I wasn't technical and I needed to come up with something that was going to make sense. I have to understand what it is that we're selling. I mean, I do remember it actually might have been, so I started out in that kind of service launch role. From there, the next place that I was just like marketing director guy. So I was doing a lot of asset stuff, like Marcom type stuff. Then from there, I went into a more formal product marketing manager role from there. And it was that company, I still have the book. It's that company where I more formally launched it. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Where I created a book for a launch. Um, Again, this is probably the early 2000s. So it's not like it is today where you just do all this stuff electronically and send stuff out and like right. So I had this binder. I'm sure I could find it if you wanted to see it. But I had this binder. I called it the What's New. It's the What's New document. It's not even document. I just called it What's New. And I made two versions of it. One was a full out binder and it just went through every feature. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Um, but prior to that, I used to create for myself a messaging guide really everywhere I went. I'd create this messaging guide and I'd go deep, right? So there's sections on audience and sections on product and sections on industry and all sorts of things, but it was for me. It wasn't for anyone else. It's the first thing I would do whenever I started a new product marketing role because I was in tech. Again, need to understand the tech. And so I'd interview product managers. I'd interview if the company wasn't big enough, it would sometimes just interviewing the founder, whatever, whoever the product expert was. I'm interviewing them. I'm talking to salespeople. I'm going on sales calls. I'm trying to understand this stuff. Answered those three questions for every single little component of that product. Everything. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? And I put it in a book,
Hmm.
in a Word doc.
Yeah.
I used to print out that Word doc and take it with me everywhere. You used to get ratty and everything, but I'd mark it up. Like I'd hear something, I'm on a customer call, I hear something, ooh, blah. I'm sitting in a roadmap session and I hear, ooh, marking it up. And then when it was the new release, I'd make my edits, I'd print out a new one.
Hmm.
So this one time, I print out a new one. I'm late getting to the printer. I might have said this on your friend's podcast too. Um, I'm late getting to the printer, and there's this sales guy there, and he's flipping through my book, and he goes, "Is this yours?" And I said, "Yeah." "Can I have it?" "Yes, yes, you can." So I started using it for sales enablement.
Yeah.
And
And
the
that's where
thing about
sales
I called
enablement
it, I
started.
renamed it. So I renamed it Sales Pack, and I started using it for sales enablement, and it worked like a freaking charm, especially for new sales onboarding. It was amazing
Yeah.
because
Wow.
again, because I wasn't technical, most of the companies that I worked at, we weren't selling to super technical people. We were selling to, C-level execs or line of business, running a line of business. We weren't selling most to CTO. CIOs were often like a gatekeeper. You had to get past that. IT was a gatekeeper. You had to appease IT, but it was always selling deeply technical stuff to completely non-technical people. And that was great for me
Mm-hmm.
because I am a non-technical person. And so I needed to understand this stuff. And so because I got things down to their essence, I could always steer a conversation. That's how I teach salespeople to do it too. Understand the essence of this. And then anything you say, if you understand the essence, you're in such a better position to be able to respond, to be able to proactively plant seeds, to be able to react when somebody says something. If somebody asks you a question, you can come back to that foundation. You already know the answer because you know it that deeply. You don't have to know all of the specifics. That's what IT is for. But so what I do is I'd use the sales pack. It got things super tight. It got things super simple, and yet it wasn't ever dumbing anything down. So sales, the I used to work to get it incorporated into sales onboarding. Sometimes it was easy to do. Sometimes it was a fight, depending on the size of the company or the politics of the company. And then what happened was it became such a core part of sales onboarding. That company was ramping up so fast, and they're like, we're not going to be able to keep up and get people functional that quickly. Hold my beer.
I can
And
do
we
it.
did it. We did it. Like people would go through the training, and within a couple months they'd be pulling in stuff.
Yeah. I love this topic, and I think it segues really well because you talked about not dumbing down your messaging, but lifting it up and getting to the essence of the message. It's really a good place to, it makes it easier, I feel like, to spread that message internally. But I wanted to segue to how do you, as a product marketer, know when your messaging is resonating with the audience?
First off, the most important thing to do in terms of knowing whether it's resonating. Yeah, you can look at stats and look at the data and all that, and that helps. Just knowing, like, the catch with doing stuff like that is if you're doing A/B testing and you're changing too many things, which most people do, you have no idea what's what. The way that I like to do it, kind of old school, kind of back to my roots, trade shows are the best because you get instant feedback and you can test. You can test new ways of saying it. You can test new things, and nothing's gonna happen. Nothing. And so to answer your question, how do you know when your audience, it resonates with your audience? They're interested. You're getting a head nod while you're talking. Like now, granted, if you're on a website, you can't do that. But it's why I say all the time, what we're going for with any type of messaging and copy, what we're going for is that virtual head nod. You can't be there, but you know that when you're talking and saying something that people are like, yeah, I can get on board with this, they're nodding their head. The point of a great message isn't, oh, I want to sell more stuff. Like, yes, I do. I want to sell more stuff. I mean, I use that in my own messaging all the time. Nail the message, sell more stuff. That's the end goal. But truly, what do we want? We want them to take the next step, whatever that is. And so, if your audience, if you're talking with someone, you can't see them, and they're moving along and they're asking the right questions, then you know. If it's, that's interesting. All right, see it, or it's just quiet, or what do you think? I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't really hit.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really hit.
Okay. So just to summarize that, it's kind of like a leading indicator, almost in like any conversation that you have. If the conversation is carrying on, they're asking more questions, they're giving you that virtual head nod, essentially, whether you see it on camera or not, you're starting to realize that that messaging is resonating, separate from looking at the metrics that you would see on, say, Google Analytics or in your whatever data platform, your CRM, you're seeing that bookings are coming in or whatever it is that your CTA is.
Well, yeah, for sure. And look, I'm not saying the data doesn't matter. The data
Oh yeah.
definitely matters. Definitely matters. Because at the end of the day, what do we want to do? We do want to sell more stuff. Everybody does. That's the whole purpose of business. It's to sell more stuff.
Yes.
So if you're getting those virtual head nods, you feel like your message is resonating and you're not seeing it in the data after a set amount of time, then yeah, that's not really hitting the way that you thought. Something's up. Where is it? But, what I'm saying is just relying on that data, unless it's something specific, right? Like winter, for example, like that messaging. Are you familiar with winter? Yeah, like
Yeah.
winter. Okay, that's specific. That's someone looking at messaging and giving me feedback on messaging. That's different. That's qualitative. But if you're looking at quantitative data, you got to make sure that without a doubt, beyond doubt, that the reason why this isn't happening is the message is off. Because, well, it might not be. The message could be on. Now, if you're talking about just a simple call to action button on a website, that's a little different. That's a little, web messaging. That's a little web copy, I guess. That's a little different because if I know people are clicking that, I know the message to drive them to click that is working.
Okay. Let's jump into the messaging versus copy that you were explaining a little bit. What are your
Sure,
thoughts on the difference there?
sure. Well, I'm going to start even higher level than that. So, because there's positioning, messaging, and copy. I've been talking about this for a long time this way, and it seems to resonate with people. So positioning is how we want to show up in the minds of our buyers. How do you want to show up? What do you want to be known for? How do you want to show up? That's positioning. How you show up in the minds of your buyers. Messaging is what you say. Copy is how you say it. What you say in support of that position. Copy is how you say what you say about that position. So it's what messaging and copy is what you say and how you say it. Now, like I said, sometimes the message can be the copy.
What would be an instant of that?
So GoMocha, their core message is reveal hidden service efficiencies and win in a service first world. That's their core message. If you go to their website, gomocha.com, you will see reveal hidden service efficiencies and win in a service first world. But what they have done is they have rallied around a single term, efficiencies, because what we learned when speaking to their audience is that with field service operators, the number one thing they care about more than anything else is efficiencies, because efficiencies drive better service. Better service drives better customer experience. Better customer experience drives customer loyalty. Customer loyalty drives more revenue. So they rallied around efficiencies. We figured out that reveal hidden service efficiencies worked. Reveal hidden efficiencies worked because we tested it in sales calls. And yeah, let's talk about efficiencies. Everyone in their space talks features. They're not talking features, they're talking efficiencies. And they've changed that entire go-to-market motion to be all around efficiencies.
Mhm. So the you talked about reveal efficiencies. I feel like when we're looking at the difference in the copy and the messaging, if there is any difference there in that example, it could be in using the word reveal, kind of from a conversion copywriting perspective, right?
It could be the word reveal. The first thing I do with any company I work with is that message clarity workshop. And what we're doing in there is we're answering those three questions together. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Um, the result of that is they get a narrative and they get crystal clear messaging across product, audience, problem. There's sales messaging in it, that sort of thing. For their message clarity workshop, we did end up changing the word to reveal. I don't remember the word we had initially, but it was something like reveal. But and that's fine, right? It's you just hit on it too. Sometimes you may never use a specific message in market the way that you write the message. It's like it reminds me a lot of sales enablement. I figured out, I don't know how many years in, maybe a decade in. I had worked for these companies with sales leaders who always wanted sales presentations scripted. So I was used to writing scripts. And I realized after working with just a killer sales team, wait a second, salespeople don't want scripts. They're not gonna use these. They're gonna say what they want to say. And so I changed my approach. So I stopped doing sales decks, and I'd create libraries. And that way also you have salespeople ask, "Hey, can you make me a slide on this?" And this is, you get that
We've
all the
all heard that.
time. But what I used to say to them in response to that is, are there other are there other salespeople that could use this slide? This is in my head first. Are there other salespeople that could use this? Is this something that is a situational thing, or is this something that's a broad thing? And if it was a broad thing, then I'd prioritize and do it. If it wasn't, I'd put it on my roadmap if I have time. And I'd push back and say, this seems like it's an individual thing. You have a library, try build something yourself. If you want to hit me with something to review, I'm happy to do it. But what I do over time, those libraries would get pretty massive. And then I started organizing them. So, hey, here are a bunch of different intros. Boom. Hey, here's you think about our product. So again, the way that we didn't get into this too much, but the way that I do product messaging, same thing. What is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Start at the feature level. Once I understand all these features, now I can bucketize it. What are the buckets here?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's a taxonomy exercise.
Just to summarize what you were saying is it sounds like sometimes messaging can be just an internal thing. You don't always have to
Sometimes,
have messaging
yeah,
be external.
well that's right. Sometimes, and so, this is why people confuse copy with messaging. Because there are not hard and fast rules here. It's not like, oh, that's messaging or oh, that's copy. Sometimes that it's copy, but I look, my site, right? So if you went to my site, which is terrible, by the way, you shouldn't go to my site.
Is that reverse
I
psychology?
figure if I say my site is terrible, everybody will go to my site. It is pretty terrible, but I do want you to visit my site, zachmessler.com. It's be perfectly understood is the headline there. And then I say, what you sell is amazing. Help your audience see that too. So that is that is messaging and that is copy. What do I what do I do? Well, I work with founders and marketers on what to say and how to say it so they attract more buyers and sell more stuff. That's kind of copy.
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't
also,
always have to be overly wordy and really in depth and a whole page of this is our messaging strategy. Sometimes it could be
oh yeah, well,
just
see,
simple.
like this goes back to what I was saying before. If you think about things and say about anything, this isn't just messaging, anything. What would this look like if it were simple? It helps to do that 100% of the time. What would this look like, especially if it's kind of complex? What would this look like if it were simple? You know, this is really this is how I approach things, mostly because I had to build it all myself. So when I hear somebody say, I want a messaging platform, I can do a messaging platform, but the messaging platform is, what is it? What does it do? Why does it matter? Because to answer those questions, we have to know, who are we selling to? What is the problem that they have? What are their jobs to be done? What are the effects of that problem? What is the business impact from all of those effects? This gets into, man, this is a deeper level messaging conversation. This gets into, I call it the hierarchy of clarity,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So message clarity is so much more than people think, and so much more than anybody talks about. And if you search message clarity, most of what you'll find is tacit understanding. Your message has to be clear so people understand what you're saying. That's not message clarity. That is being understood.
Mm.
But
All
the
right.
the difference between what people think message clarity is and what message clarity actually is what people think it is I want my message to be understood, right? That's what they think it is. What it really is, oh, this speaks to me. I want this. That's message clarity. It's the difference between being understood and being perfectly understood. And when I say perfectly understood, it's both. It's a two-way street. It's you as my prospect. You perfectly understand me. But
Mm-hmm.
through my message, I am showing you that I perfectly understand you.
Mm. Yeah.
That's message clarity.
I love that example. Now that we're on the topic of message clarity, there's a problem that a lot of product marketers have, and a problem that a lot of them wrestle with, and that can come down from top down leadership or sales or many other places. But it's, I want to be concise and snappy with my messaging and my copy, but I also don't want to leave anything out. What advice would you give to product marketers who are wrestling with that challenge?
Yeah. First, get over yourself. You're gonna leave stuff out and it's okay. It's okay. You if you don't leave stuff out, you're leaving nothing to be discovered, right? You think of how people buy. It's like I don't need to know everything right up front, ever, with anything. If I get to a point that I want to know everything all right front, well, guess what? I'm already hooked. So this goes back to something we said a lot earlier in this conversation. What's the purpose of the message? The purpose of any message is not to just boom, share everything all at once, right? So you're not going to have, you shouldn't have a message that has this and that and this and that. That tells me that that company does it, or that marketer hasn't figured out how to lift things up. They haven't figured out that one thing. There's always one thing, always.
When you say one thing, you mean the one thing that completely resonates with whoever the buyer is that they care about the most?
It's from an audience perspective, yes.
Okay.
There's one thing that's going to resonate most with that buyer, right? And it may be different from this buyer to that buyer to individuals, but there's always one thing that's going to resonate most. And on the flip side, on the product side, our product, our feature, our product, our service, whatever, what's the one thing that it does that's more important than anything else? What's that one thing? Now, if you find it the right way, often that one thing will include a number of different things, right? So I don't remember the exact wording that we used or language, and I probably should remember all these buckets, but I don't. But like Gomocha. So what's Gomocha do? It reveals hidden service efficiencies so you win in a service first world. But the way that I'd say that in a conversation, oh, well, through a combination of this, that, and the other thing, Gomocha reveals hidden service efficiencies. That way you win. I mean, no one would say that way you win. That's more of a web thing. But um, I think you
It's like
you
win
catch what
what?
I'm throwing down.
Yeah, I do. Well, how would you as a product marketer, I know you're taking into, all right, what is the one thing that the customer cares about? What is the one thing from that we're trying to get across from a marketing side of things? Like what is the one thing that it does and we're trying to communicate? How do you identify if you've allowed any type of bias to creep into that
Oh,
message
that's a
or
good
what you're trying to
question. You
say?
were you were asking that. I mean, the first step is awareness, really. The first step is awareness. I think everyone has bias. Even when you think you don't have bias, you probably do. So it's being aware of it first and foremost. The number one way that it can show up too, and this is real. This used to happen to me all the time, and just from speaking with marketers who are clients, I know this still happens. You write something, you put it through the approval process, and you have your founder or you have your CMO, and that person says, "Well, I wouldn't respond to this. This is crap. I wouldn't respond to this." So at that point, that's bias right there. That's bias. Now, you didn't ask this question, but the way that you handle that, look, product marketing is not for the faint of heart. I did not learn this until my very last stop on the corporate train, and that stop could be a whole podcast, dude. And we could come back. I'll come back and tell you about that if you want. But but I got, I guess, kind of pushed a little too hard at my last place where it was pretty toxic. I was being yelled at all the time. Mostly, I had a guy, VP of marketing, who was telling me to do things, super micromanaging, telling me to do things that I knew were not going to work, right? From a messaging perspective, it was all the chest beaty crap, and it was everywhere.
Hmm.
And then when I pushed back, just do it. Fine. I'm a good corporate guy. It comes to a point where you fight the fight, and at some point you either have to get on board or you gotta go. I'm like, okay, I'll get on board with this. Fine. So I did it, and then it wouldn't work, and then it would be my fault, and I'd get yelled at. And yeah, the yelling was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I used to, it stressed me out so much, man. It stressed me out. I'd be so stressed. I was so stressed at work. And marketing and tech, it's a young person's game. I started looking for jobs. I couldn't find anything that was paying me where I was at. And so at this point, I'm ready to quit. And so, I always like to talk about this book actually for this exact reason. Have you ever read The 4 Hour Work Week?
Oh yeah. I've
Yeah,
read that.
yeah. Love this book. I've never read the whole thing. It's just that first section. What's the
It's a
worst
good
thing
thing
that
to
could
like
happen?
skim through.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's amazing. What's the worst thing that could happen? Absolutely fundamentally changed my life because I internalized that. So I had I used to keep a pad by my bed because I was so stressed. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I need to get everything out. And so I'd go downstairs and I'd write something and I'd go back to bed. So this one time, I remember the date. It was July 15th. I had this epiphany. I went downstairs. I wrote it all out. I called it the key to the universe. And I started living this way. So the key to the universe, I said, is simple, but it's really difficult. And I'm not sure I can do it. It's two things, and they have to happen in tandem. And the first thing is do the right thing. If you have experience and even just a modicum of ethics, you know what the right thing to do is in any circumstance. So just do it. Just do the right thing. So when it comes to your job, right? If I know something's right in my job, I was hired, wasn't hired to please people. I was hired to enable sales. I was hired to sell more product. I was hired to communicate the value of our incredible, incredible stuff. That's why I was hired. So I know what the right thing to do is to be able to do those things. So I'm going to do it. The second thing is don't be afraid of what happens when you do the right thing. That's where a lot of people fail. That's where I failed for most of my career. Everyone is afraid of something typically. You're worried about, well, what if I lose my job? It's the what ifs. It's all those negative what ifs.
Yep.
What if I
Yeah.
lose my job? What if I miss my bonus? But the reality is that it doesn't matter. That stuff doesn't matter. Now, it's easy for me to say, what if I lose my job? Oh, you'll find another one. Well, I mean, it's not easy these days. I can't say that to someone. Oh, don't worry, you'll find another job.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that's true. What I do know is it's a belief. I believe everything's going to work out. I really do. And if things aren't going to work out, well, that means that I'm not here. So, okay, I'm not going to know anyway. I truly believe that everything will work out. And so after that epiphany, I started living that way. So when that VP of marketing said to me, I remember it vividly the first time I said it, well, this is terrible. I wouldn't buy that. And I said to him, well, good thing you're not in the market for an application platform. Let's test it with the audience. I bet you it works. And it did. So when I say product marketing is not for the faint of heart, that's what I mean. You have to have guts to be a great product marketer. You have to have guts. You have to be willing to push back. You have to be willing to speak truth to power. And like I said, there comes a point, if you want to be a good corporate citizen, there comes a point where you fight your fight, you push for what you know is right, and if that's not what the company decides to do, you have a choice. You can fall in line or you can leave. But there does come a point. Now it's a balance of figuring out when that is for sure. But it's not for the faint of heart. I really believe that if you're going to be a truly great product marketer, then you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
So if I were to summarize this into three things, it's especially from a bias perspective in how you're creating messaging and what copy you're using. Well, first is to just be aware that you as an individual have biases. You need to be aware of that. And then we got into your philosophical roots, and I love this. It's, well, first you need to have, it takes guts to produce and be great product messaging. And you need to know when you're doing the right thing, when to say no internally, that hey, us internally, it makes sense, but what about to the buyer? It takes guts to say, hey, we're going to do it differently. And the third thing is as a product marketer, you have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to not be afraid to take a chance and realize a lot of times a bias can come from what you know and what is familiar with you. And getting a message that is going to resonate more with the audience is put your guts out there. Be willing to take the risk. Be willing to take the chance.
Absolutely. And then the last thing too is this is where the data does come in. Test it. Test it, whether it's at a show, whether it's on a platform like Winter, whether it's just creating a landing page and popping a Google ad to it for your, to that specific audience to see what's hits. Test it and see. I mean, have salespeople use it in conversations, right? What happens is that's when you learn what really works. I rail all the time on the word revolutionize because AI's killed it. Revolutionize or even empower or enable. Enable's my least favorite word in tech because if you think about it, What is technology? What does it do? Any technology. It enables. Any technology is enabling. It
Yep.
just is. When you think of the essence of technology, technology is an enabler. That's what
Hmm.
it is. It makes things better, faster, strong, whatever. So it's a weak message. If you're calling out your tech as ah XYZ enables you to blah 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 blah, the root of that sentence is enable. This is where grammar comes in. The root of that sentence is enable. If we were taking that down to its core, it would be product enables. That's weak.
Very
That's
generic.
weak.
Hmm.
Flip the message, right? It's not the product enables, it's what they do, right? And you're kind of saying it, but you're not. So instead of here, I'll use these Bose headsets as an example.
Yeah, go for it.
So my Bose headsets enable me. I don't know. You have cool headsets. What do your headsets do for you?
They allow me to hear what you're saying.
Okay. So that's perfect. That's perfect. Bose headset, I don't know if yours are Bose, they look it. Bose headsets allow you to hear what the other person's saying crystal clearly. Well, you don't need that whole first part. Hear everything. Hear everything
Yeah.
without noise. That's a great tactical tip. So without is such a great word for messaging. If you're thinking about how do we say something concisely and still have it be differentiating, well, you could say, do this thing without this other thing, right? So you think of jobs to be done or a certain thing that your audience does that's difficult for them, right? So I'll use AI as an example here, and I'm just like right off the cuff thinking of challenges with AI that people have. So let's say that we had a product that actually used AI to generate AI prompts, a little meta. So a lot of people I think have trouble with AI prompts. They don't know the right way to prompt. So prompt achieve great no get great AI prompts without prompting AI.
That is
You
very
know,
meta.
kind of goofy,
Uh,
but without can be a really great way to keep things concise and yet get it more specific. So what are the things this thing doesn't do? Or what are the problems? What's the typical problem that someone has that you solve? What do they want to remove from a certain experience or certain thing?
yeah.
That's the without.
Okay. That's a great example. It definitely, you talked about kind of the three positioning, messaging, and copy. I feel like that without can almost fit into all three.
It
Of the
can.
without
It
positions
can.
your product differently from whatever they're using, whatever problem they're having. It shows specifically what the product does, what it's for, and then it could also be used in copy to in a
Absolutely.
short sentence of like
And now
or
you
a
see why
headline.
I call all these positioning messaging copy, they're kissing cousins. That's what they are.
That's true.
They're kissing cousins. It's why
Uh,
people have so much trouble understanding the difference between them.
hey, I wanted to get to some of our lightning round or closeout questions. I know you've given us a ton of advice for product marketers and for messaging specifically, but if there is one piece of messaging advice that you would give to a listener to take away and be able to implement tomorrow, what would it be?
Oh, this is easy. Do you see my shirt?
Flip the message.
Flip the
Yep.
message. That's my advice. Flip the message. Make it about your audience, not your product. So flip the message. When you're starting out, when your message is starting out, it's on the top of your site. It's the headline on a data sheet or on a slide. It's not about you. It's about them. Flip the message. It means you talk about your product. I call it the first rule of product messaging, in fact. The first rule of product messaging is don't talk about the product. You do. You always talk about the product, but you do it in a way that's peripheral to your product. It's not the product itself. It's what does my audience achieve with this product? What's the problem my audience has that this product addresses? What are the benefits that my audience achieves using this product? What are the warning signs of the problems that they have that my product addresses? These are not about the product itself. That's also flip the message, because what are these things really about? They're about the audience and what they can achieve with my product. The audience is always the hero of the story. When you flip the message, you make sure that that's so.
I love it. I love it. A more personal question. If you could put this into one sentence, what is living all about?
For me, living is all about love. My initial thought was, oh, it's about my kids. But it's more than that. It's definitely more than my kids. Well, it's about love. Loving what you do, loving the people you're with, loving the different things that you experience. Living is about love.
So good. Love it. Love it.
That's a great example of what we were talking about before, of lifting up a message.
Yeah,
right?
and what you were saying of like having guts and doing the right thing and not being afraid. If you're finding yourself in a position or a job or doing something that you don't love, move on from it. It might be time to find something that really does give you joy, because we do know that, yes, what we do for work and what we experience or what we spend most of our time doing can definitely bleed into the other aspects of our life. If you have children, if you have a spouse, whatever it may be, doing something that you love, it can easily allow that, whatever it's causing emotionally, to push into other aspects of your life. So if listeners found what you shared valuable, what's one thing they could do to help lift you up?
First, LinkedIn. Drop me a follow on LinkedIn. Start reading my stuff. Interact with me. That's great. I love interacting with people on LinkedIn, engaging. If you're interested in interacting with me and a group of people talking about messaging, the third Wednesday of every month, I run a program called Nail the Message, Sell More Stuff. It's free. It's a Zoom. You can get there. I actually today, this is wild. You can go to nailthemessage.com and it will drive you to be able to register for that. But again, it's a free event. It's a Zoom. I will ask you to be on camera, so if that's not your thing, just know that I'll poke at you. But what I do on Nail the Message, Sell More Stuff is I always teach one core principle, and then we open it up, right? So I'll ask people what they want to, what questions they want answered, and it'll be like an Ask Me Anything for the rest of the time. So I've ran it once. It was great. Running it again December 18th. You can sign up, Nail the Message, Sell More Stuff. I'm planning on running this till I don't feel like running this anymore. So if you're listening to this like 2 years from now, odds are I'm probably still doing it. So nailthemessage.com.
Awesome. All right. You heard the man. Zach, thank you so much. This was so good.
Yeah, Josh, thanks for having me. I love helping launch new podcasts too, and what you're doing with this, with On the Message, oh my gosh, this is great. It's great. You're going to help a lot of people with this.
Thank you. All right, bye everyone.